Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to do a midway point review for Gundam GQuuuuuX. Or GQuuuuuX. Anyway, hey guys, so, been putting up the Gundam review videos. As you can tell, I'm a little bit behind because like the video I haven't even finished editing video for 4 and 5, and now we're already at episode 6. So, by the time that this video is going up, episode 4 and 5 will hopefully be on the channel. You might notice something about the video titles, specifically. On episode 3, I used a very negative title, and it got me 300 extra views up as opposed to the regular 100. And now it's just making me think that, yeah, I probably should be titling them a little bit more sensationally. So I'm going to be doing that with episode 4 and 5. But for this video's title, maybe I decided on doing something a little bit nicer. But fundamentally, thanks for watching, Gundam fans. It is a review video for the whole series so far. I want to begin with saying very quickly that if you are someone who's wondering about watching the series, honestly, I think you should watch episode 1 and 2. Generally, Gundam is a high quality series, like they do put a lot of effort into the writing. Check episode 1 and 2, and the reason I say that is because episode 1 and 2 I think is indicative of the overall series. That is, it goes from one thing to the next very quickly in terms of just sudden changes in mood or something like that, or sudden changes in idea. Like sudden shifts is really what this Gundam series is about. It feels like too many ideas are being squished together, and so like episode 4 is a very fast episode, and then episode 5 is a much slower episode. They pick really weird moments to expand on and really weird moments to kind of squish everything together. So if you watch episode 1 and 2 and you like that, then you're probably okay going on with the rest of the Gundam series. Now let's actually talk. We're at 6 episodes of Gundam GQuuuuuX. Guys, honestly, I liked episode 6 a lot. If episode 6 wasn't what it was, I would have been a little bit more critical in this review. Not really critical, it's more like I would have been explaining more about the things I don't like. But the thing is, like, episode 6 comes in and it brings in the elements in Gundam that I do enjoy. And I feel in a way, it's actually reminded me a lot of close to the season finale for for Gundam Witch from Mercury. It's reminding me of the season finale for the first season of Witch from Mercury, with the way that everything is being set up with an assassination attempt and all that kind of stuff, and the players getting on the board. But yeah, here we are, Gundam GQuuuuuX. Let me start with the things that ultimately I don't really enjoy, or I haven't been enjoying about Gundam GQuuuuuX that much. The first thing is, like, it doesn't feel like the Gundam is all that important. When you look at the structure of the episodes, you can see that the first 15 minutes are pretty much about Machu's life. And I think that moment where like Machu just leaves the Gundam behind with the Pomeranians is pretty indicative of that for me. But the first 15 minutes are just about Machu's life. And then the Gundam is the final 5 minutes. And what's really interesting about this is that at points it doesn't really feel like this is about Gundams. It feels like this is about people who interact with Gundams. And mind you, like every series kind of has that. But the way it doesn't feel as formulaic, and the Gundams are more integrated into everything. Like, actually, we're talking about characters. I think Shuji has the most integrated relationship with his Gundam because of, he is kind of crazy, space psychic, right? But he's the one that makes it feel like a proper Gundam show in those small bursts. I don't think I would want to follow him as a main character because I honestly don't think that they have anything else they could do with him as a main character. Trying to put him as a main character is trying to get people to relate to someone who is like really disturbed by all the new type hallucinations that they have gone through. Anyway, coming back to this, it doesn't really feel like the Gundam is the most important thing here until Shuji is there and he's making the Gundam the most important thing. And there's other things too. It's like the way that the villains are presented. One thing about the other Gundam series that I really enjoy is that very early on you have very clear antagonists who are sticking the way through the entirety of the series. They are constantly doing stuff. This Monster of the Week format is not my favorite thing. And mind you, again, Monster of the Week format, it is a valid approach to doing stuff, but not my personal favorite. I don't like this introducing a character just at the beginning, only to have like a kind of lackluster fight and have it fueled by, oh, these guys just have a bone to pick with the idea of Gundam. Now they're like in episode 3 with that lady, there was some cool ideas, but then there are points where it feels like the series is leaning on people knowing UC. Like they bring up the names of people. There was one guy in episode 3, I think he was the engineer for the Gundam or whatever, or the suit that the lady ended up using. And he's like shown in a shot and they say his name and it's like, okay, I don't know who that is. I don't watch UC. I've never watched UC, and it's a good thing I haven't watched UC because I'm the one that probably has the best perspective to be talking about the people coming into the show after watching Witch from Mercury. I don't know who that is. I googled him and I saw that his name was significant. It's like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, if you're a UC fan, that'll make a lot of sense. But these moments where that happens, and episode 6 does have moments where it's like, it feels like this is more significant for someone who's watched UC. And we'll talk about why that's important in a second. But you have these moments, you have the characters coming in, you have these villains coming in. We don't have any like really prominent, accentuated villain until maybe episode 6, where things are starting to happen like, a little bit more aggressively. But like when you look back at Gundam Wing, you have Treize and Zex. When you look back at Gundam 00, you don't really know who's going to be your final villain because Gundam 00 has a lot of factions. But you have Mari very early on. You have Andre, like the Bear of Russia, I believe. Ali Al-Sacha, I believe he pops up later. Trinity's pop up later. But you had Graham was there. You had antagonistic forces very early on who stayed for longer than one episode. And that is something that this Gundam series just doesn't really have. And then, of course, you know, if you go into Gundam IBO, you know Galahorn is there. You're always seeing these side shots to Galahorn and all the other factions going on. You have a very strong cast of characters in most Gundam series, but this one focusing on the girls, it's not really there because we focus on pretty much nothing important for the slice of life part. Like, I believe for episode 4, I believe it was episode 4. Like, for episode 5, I think, we just have Machu dialogueless sequences of her just being at school. And her just, like, lounging. Now, the lounging was important because she was decompressing from a big event. But these moments are vapid. They're, like, the content density in this Gundam is really low after episode 3. So fundamentally, like when we compare the villains across the Gundam series, heck, even Witch from Mercury, you had an antagonistic force in Miorine's father very early on. Like, this was constant friction with him and his daughter throughout the entirety of that first half of the season. And of course, Perospera and all the stuff that was going on with her. And like, we had consistent villains constantly scheming in the background. We also were allowed to have a villain lose and then go on to do something amazing later in GuuuuuuuL. G-U-E-L, I don't know how to pronounce that, but you know, GuuuuuuuL. He got to go to Earth and all that kind of stuff. So when you look at the other Gundam series, you come back to this one, like, nah, the energy of the antagonistic side and the development on the antagonist is not as great as the other Gundams. There's just no way around it. Now, the Gundam that you could probably compare this to is probably G Gundam, in the sense that, you know, you have fights, like sport-based fights for the Gundams, but G Gundam has way more spirit and way more hot blood in it, so it gets points for entirely different reasons. But that is one part of Gundam GQuuuuuuX that I just don't really enjoy. I don't like the lack of importance on the Gundam. The shift in focus to the people interacting with the Gundams is interesting, and I don't like the lack of strong villainous representation within the series. I just don't think Gundam does better in that regard. I don't like this over-reliance on UC. Now, mind you, if these guys were coming in and they're thinking, oh, let's do something for the UC guys. I want to do something cool. Let's like compromise. Let's do something for UC fans. I think that's cool. I think you get significantly more value out of this if you know what happens in the Universal Century, as opposed to don't. Heck, even in episode 6, you see I saw a character I recognize from somewhere else. Because I do watch some parts of UC, I just haven't watched all of UC, and I don't have the memory to be able to remember the parts I did watch. So, that in mind, what does this Gundam series do well? Because I'm going to title that episode 5 is one of the best episodes. But now I think episode 6 is better. But episode 5, what made episode 5 so special? Well, really, because they're limiting on the Gundams, we actually come back to the characters. And what's really interesting here is that the Gundam has become less of a character, and we have way more focus on the new type experience. With episode 4, we also have a focus on the new types, with the one lady having a vendetta against new types and the idea that they represent. And then, you know, at the end of episode 5, you have Machu coming into this place where she says, the Kira Kira experience is something for me and Shuji only, which she's really possessive of this experience. So it's interesting, the shift has been from the Gundams to the new type experience. So, and it also makes it like a more character-based experience. But now, when we go into that, I never thought we would be in a point where we're actually seeing this mess unfold and then the outburst that Machu has in episode 6 makes it really better. And it's all centered on Machu being jealous of Neon having the Kira Kira experience. You know what? That really made it awesome for me. We're just dealing with the equivalent of space psychic love triangles, you know? And I like the mess. I think it's super messy. I'm into it. That was the most invested I was in this whole thing, because it's just, that's when the characters really start to step out. Like Neon too. Like Neon's character becomes very, you can see a lot of her character in episode 5. That was much better, and it's ultimately brought out partly by the new type experience, but partly because like Neon was just like suffering. I think they did much better in that regard. The mess of the relationships, it really turns it into a more coming of age story with episode 5. And I think by the end of this, you probably will see that this is a coming of age story. And I think episode 6 reinforces that. So that's where I really started enjoying this more. The Gundam is just a vehicle to get you into the new type Kira Kira experience. And that's a cool idea. I just wish it wasn't happening. I do prefer the Gundams being a vehicle for cool combat instead of like it being about getting into this very special space and then doing really cool things in that space and all that kind of stuff. You know, I think it's okay to focus on different things every other Gundam series. So not a really big deal in the end. Going forward for the series, the biggest curiosity I have is really, are people who only have Witch of Mercury as their point of exposure, are they going to be willing to sit down for this series? I do need to look into the reception. I need to see if there is any kind of reception, if people do like it. I think I'll talk to my correspondent in Japan and ask her if she can find any information that could point us into understanding whether or not people like this Gundam series a lot. Maybe there's other ways. It's on Prime, so maybe Japan, maybe Amazon Prime Japan has more data for us. Maybe we can figure it out and do some comparison and all that kind of stuff through Amazon's metrics. We'll have to see. Now, talking about episode 6. I think episode 6 is great because it addresses a lot of the problems I have. And I think episode 6 is great because it allows us to see the problems with Machu. And when I say problems, I don't mean like she is a badly written character. I mean the problems that the creators most likely designed for her to have. In episode 5, and this is another reason why episode 5 is really good, they introduced a very critical element, because I don't believe it was introduced in the earlier episodes, but if it was, apologies, it wasn't brought up to my attention. In episode 5, it explains that Machu is a debutante. She is a high society lady. This is also the episode where we find out that Neon is a refugee. We're bringing up the class divide now. The reason that this was important, bringing up that she's a debutante, is because this puts a lot of things into perspective, and it also makes Machu look a little bit different in episode 6. Machu is a girl who has had everything in her life, and like most characters of this design, she wants the thing that she hasn't gotten to have. So while Neon's out there being a refugee, Machu is here, living the high life, going to one of the best schools in the area, supported by her mom, and she wants more. I like this because we are now creating this narrative of the girl who has everything. And then when you go into this whole thing about the Kira Kira was supposed to be for me and him only, what's happened here is that she has something that only she has, and she wants to keep it. And when you have the extra themes of class in there, it's easy to see, like for me, it's easy to read Machu as a really spoiled child who just wants what she doesn't have. She craves something that she doesn't have. But look, if she was a super poor kid, if she was a refugee, would this plight about I want the freedom of going to Earth, I want to go to the ocean, if she was a poor child who couldn't find food every day, if she was living under rags, like the way Neon is in some little cave in the colony or something like that, yeah, she'd probably be thinking about wanting to go to Earth still, but she'd probably also be thinking about where she's going to get her food from next. Where's she going to make money from? Machu doesn't have to deal with those kind of things. So with the introduction of that, and then you have the juxtaposition of Neon there, it's very purposeful on the part of the writers. And you go into episode 6, and what's really interesting here is that you have fallout from this moment of her emotions, and we see an extreme emotional peak in Machu when she has the Kira Kira moment stolen from her by Neon. You have this extreme emotional peak, but after Machu sees Shuji murk that woman, like the emotions are not there. It's subdued. She's decompressing. Completely different emotion, and because so much more time is taken, having Machu freak out and act out of character and yell things that we don't really see her, it makes it feel like, hey, him killing that woman is not that important. But yo, this girl getting on my acid trip, it is more important. And that's funny. I think that it's by design, and I think it fits with the character the way she is. And when we go into episode 6, we have this moment with the parent-teacher meeting. And I gotta tell you this, because this is indicative of how it works for normal people. A normal person was standing behind me, and she happened to see the subtitles that popped up about, hey, Machu, like, I'll do whatever I can to support you. And then Machu says, I want to go to the ocean. And then, like, that isn't a career girl. And she, like, shoots off and runs away. And my friend is just there, and she laughs. Because it's so stupid. And when I say stupid, I really mean it's silly. It's silly seeing that, like, interplay. And I do think the nuance in that situation was actually really nice. You had the mom upset, but then she calms down and she asks Machu, what do you want to do? And Machu says she has her moment and she wants to go to the ocean. And then the mom, like, shoots back, what? And then mom shoots back, wait, that's not part of the question. And, you know, thinking about it, like, I'm an adult now, I'm probably going to have a different opinion than teenagers. Is it wrong of Machu to say that she wants to go to the ocean and accuse her mom of not really helping her and then running away? Mind you, in episode 3, we also have a moment where Machu compares that other lady to her own mother and is right trying to see the faults in her mother. Meanwhile, let's keep this in mind. Her mom works a hard job. She's putting her through a really high level school. She probably knows how shitty the world is because she's in politics. So she's trying to give Machu the best opportunity to get out of the colony. Right? So we have all of that because people don't really think about the parents' perspective in this, and we come back into this. Is the way that Machu's mom said that the worst way? Not the worst way, but maybe if you had a calmer mind, you could say that maybe the mom should have been like, Machu, I understand, I'm sorry, I'm doing my best, I don't have the resources to get us out of here. Look, I'm an island boy. If I was on the island, and I don't have that much money relative to what I need in order to be able to go somewhere, and my kid comes up to me and they say, hey, I want to see mountains because we don't have mountains on the island, I guess I'm gonna have to say, I'm sorry, I just can't. But like, if you get a better job than I do, then hopefully one day we will have the money and we'll be able to, like, book whatever flight we need to get to like go to whatever mountain you want to go to. Or like they say they want to go see ruins or something like that, right? Like, that's a normal response. Like, the Machu thing is just like overblown. And then we have, like, the next episode is going to be Machu's rebellion. It's a very overblown emotional reaction. It makes sense though, but fundamentally, like, Machu's here, and like, I like that episode 6 focuses so much on talking about, like, Machu's private space and all that kind of stuff, as if she doesn't already have so much other things handed to her in her life. She's really just seeking out something that is uniquely hers, right? And she's also seeking this idea of freedom. I wonder if she knows that every earthling is bound by gravity. I wonder if she knows that we do not have the freedom to fly into the sky just like that. Anyway, you know, there's a lot of ways to, like, rip into this. But then in episode 6, we also have more these other plot movements happening that are taking away Machu's special space. We have the Pomeranians, we have the boss lady going, and she's overheard, and Machu understands that this girl, like, she doesn't really care. The Gundam's going to be given away, she's going to lose everything. Now she has to think about protecting Shuji and all that kind of stuff. Good on that, because she does ultimately decide that she needs to protect Shuji, and that leads her back into Neon and all that kind of stuff. Also, in this part, they addressed, like, they were getting lucky with not getting caught earlier because they're using the Gundams. What I like about episode 6 fundamentally is that all the foolishness of the previous episodes are finally being addressed. You're finally getting the consequences of running around with these Gundams when Zeon is right there. Machu is having her stuff threatened in a way that she probably has never had her stuff threatened before. And Machu is also being called out as being naive, which, yeah, the first few episodes, it is a very naive, innocent approach to how they were doing this. Like, the ramifications of real-world logic weren't really applying. But in episode 6, you can see it. Everyone's suddenly... the consequences are following everyone. Zeon guy, the pilot that lost the GQuuuuuX, almost gets shot in the back alley and has to get saved by his guy. We are talking about assassinations. We're talking about a mobile arbor coming in. We have another person, another new type. The cyber new types are now coming in. All the consequences are coming in episode 6. And that's the thing about Gundam. Gundam is a series about consequences, fundamentally. There is a consequence when we look at the serious Gundams and not the experimental Gundams. There are a lot of consequences everywhere. Like, Iron-Blooded Orphans ends in a giant consequence for the kids that dared to reach for the sun. Gundam 00, there's consequences to actions, yeah, but you know, like the ending of Gundam Double is pretty idealistic. Gundam Wing, 100% a ton of consequences to people's actions and misplays in the game of war. So that's what I think is so great about episode 6, is we are here and we are returning to the idea that there are consequences to the things that happen, the consequences to using the Gundam out here. Machu having to get a crash course that her new type acid hallucination is not just for her. The man, honestly, I love it when she like yells at Nian for stealing something that didn't, like for stealing it from her. Like that, the flashback outbursts were really great. In the grand scheme of things, like when you think about it, Machu is yelling at a person for stealing her acid trip. That's what it's about. That's ultimately what angered Machu. And also probably, like, you know, it's probably getting confounded with feelings for a boy and all that kind of stuff. Her acid trip with her love interest, because that was taken from her, Machu has a freak out. I think that's good. I think it makes sense with who she is. I think it makes sense with the setting that they've created. I think it makes sense with the backstory they created. I like when we're addressing the negative qualities of these characters. And for this one, episode 6, I really love that we are getting to some grounded consequences. Interesting to point out, this episode is not really about Gundams. There's no Gundam fight happening in it. And I think, you know, I talked about, I wish the Gundams were more integrated earlier, but going off of episode 5, leaning in more to like the messy human drama, this is pretty much an episode about human dramas. Okay, I'm just going to put some footage here over top of what I'm saying, because I'm almost done and the camera just died. This is an episode about human dramas entirely. And I do think Gundam is really good when we're focusing on human drama after epic, awesome Gundam battles. And then we're leading into a pretty big battle in the next one. I think it's good. Only because episode 5 set the groundwork for like, yeah, I want to see the mess. I want to see these people figure it out. I want to see Machu get bent out of shape. I want to see Machu get put in her place. I want to see like people point out that Machu's naive and all that kind of stuff. I want to see people be nice to Machu. I want to see other guys make moves. I want to see like all that kind of stuff. Episode 6 brings back Zeon and the assassination idea. And finally, it looks like we have really, at least villains that are, well, at least we have someone who's going to fight Machu who has been in the series for more than one episode. I like that. I want to see what they're going to do with that. I think if there is any flaw that we could say there is to this series, is taking so long to get to these grounded elements of a standard Gundam series. But yeah, guys, let me know what you thought down below. Thank you so much for watching, and till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.